Welcome to the night's edition of the Klown Hour Podcast. I'm Scott Burks, my co-host, Dwayne Nash. Here you go. Check him out on the Yash HBCU Sports, raps about all things HBCU sports, as well as Sleazy Radio every Tuesday now on Facebook Live. You can check them out there. Dwayne, the coach, Sweet Lou, as well as his great work on herosports.com, where he talks about all things FCS athletics as it pertains to HBCU sports. And for me, the website's here, www.theclowntimes.net. That's my sports blog. Please check me out there. Also, speaking of this, merch.
Get that merch.
CafePress.com. Search for the Klown Time Sports. You find it there as well. I have that link, as well as the links to what Dwayne's been up to with the RSHBCU at thehbcu.com. You see the website on the back in this backdrop there, as well as Hero Sports. I get those links out there as well once I upload this to YouTube tomorrow. And one last thing, hit subscribe, like, share, comment, all that good stuff. I picked up a few more subscribers this week. So please let's keep the party going. Again, I celebrate the small victories. I'm getting close to 300 subscribers, which I didn't think could happen after I rebooted this, because we have day jobs, so we don't have time to promote it as much as we want. But anyway, I think it's cool. I think it's awesome, despite all those things. Just grinding at here at the night hour. Just keep it going. We appreciate it, and I'm sure you appreciate it too. So we're gonna keep bringing it. And,
no doubt.
Yeah, no doubt at all. Oh, and I almost forgot. I'm on Facebook. So the Klown Time is on Facebook. I say that most of the time before this point. But anyway, we're on your smartphone, desktop, laptop, wherever you are, wherever it may be. Just go to the search window, type in the Klown Times, again spelled like this. You'll find us there as well. So not many things are going on in sports outside of the coaching changes in HBCU football, namely, or mostly, I should say, in the SWAC. So there's a coaching change at Grambling that people are deeming very controversial. There are rumored of more coaching changes. And, there may be what I call a Deion Sanders effect, Coach Prime effect, which we'll explain momentarily. But I'm going to let Dwayne, since he's the czar, if you will, of HBCU athletics, which he covers, does a great job of covering. He's, as I say every week, for the past, almost damn near the past year, I lean on him. He's much closer to it than a lot of people are in the business anyway. So I'll let you take it away, and we'll go from there, brother. So floor is yours.
Wonderful. But before we get into that, I have to start out by saying, if anything, you talk about the small victories. Hey, being a fan of the Washington football team and the Washington Wizards, I'll take as many small victories as I can. Shout out to the number one team,
especially the Wizards,
the Eastern Conference.
Can you believe that? Wow. Who knew, man?
As cautious as I was about Wes Unseld Jr. coming into this organization, mainly because of his daddy and the history that I got, and it's unfortunate I'll never get a chance to punch him in the gut like I threatened to, but God rest the dead. Right. But congratulations to them, and yes, I am not opposed to small victories at all, because a dub at the end of the day is a dub. And You're talking about coaching movement. There's been coaching movement going on in the FBS ranks, but yes, there's been a lot of coaching movement going on in the SWAC ranks as well. You've got currently 3 teams that will be looking for new coaches new head coaches at the end of the season, and that is legit 1/4 of the conference. Those teams being Alabama State, who got rid of their head coach, Donald Hill Ely, right after the Magic City Classic just a few weeks ago. And then, of course, Monday. Oddly enough, it was done Monday afternoon, just hours after the weekly SWAC press conference that they do with the media. Because the media just talked to Coach Fobbs that morning, only to have the announcement come out later on that afternoon.
Oh, wow. I did not know it went down like that. They
It
let
went
the
down
man
like
go to his
that.
press conference and then break him off after his press conference. That's
Yes,
cold-blooded,
yes,
man.
it was wild, man, because he's on there, he's talking about the loss and how tough it was, and then talking about, of course, they have a bye this week and how they'll be preparing for the Bayou Classic next week. And sure enough, just a few hours later, it comes out at around 4-5 o'clock that he's no longer head coach there at Grambling.
That's wild.
And it's very interesting. So yeah, so like I said before, Coach Hill Ely over at Alabama State, of course, Coach Broderick Fobbs over at Grambling.
Yeah.
And let's not forget about Jason Rollins, who is technically the interim head coach at Southern. So technically, they're still looking for a head coach there too. So you got 3 spots there where they're looking for new head guys there. But you talk about Broderick Fobbs being a surprise, not necessarily. Now, I've infamously kind of trolled teams and schools just in general. And I kind of trolled Grambling during the spring a little bit.
Kinda.
I say kinda because they came back to me with this comment, and this was actually an infographic that I sent out.
Mm-hmm.
It was basically about Coach Fobbs' record against SWAC opponents before and after losing to North Carolina A&T in the Celebration Bowl in 2017, his last SWAC championship.
Okay.
Since his hiring in 2014 till that time, he was a robust 35-3 against the SWAC. Since that time, up until Saturday's game, 13-15. Now, the time in which I sent out the graphic, it was the day after the Springs Bayou Classic, where they lost to Southern. I think it was 42-7.
Oh no, you can't lose to the Rock Rival like that. Yeah,
not like that. No,
not like
especially
that, no.
when you had been dominating them for some time.
Right.
When he got there, so you take that into consideration. At the end of the spring, his record against conference opponents was 11-10, and at the time, I kind of suggested, is Fobbs on the hot seat or not?
Right.
I was told by Grambling alum then and Grambling fans, at least we're above 500 against the conference. Next thing you know, here comes the spring, but here comes the fall, and they go 2-5 against the conference.
Yep, the 2. I'm looking at it right now. That's what I was looking at. They're 2-5 in conference, 3-7 overall. Yeah.
Yeah, and they went 14-21 overall since winning that last SWAC championship too.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, they dealt with some injuries. They dealt with instability at the quarterback spot, something that has been a position of stability of theirs since getting there. And he just wasn't able to get his new signal caller right after before Hickenbottom. I forget the quarterback that was there before Hickenbottom. I know Grambling alums there are yelling his name out right now to me. But once he graduated in 2017, they brought in Jeremy Hickenbottom was already there, but he just didn't that entire team didn't play up to the same level as they did the seasons prior, and they've just been on a downward spiral ever since.
Right.
And it's just been a bad situation for them down in Grambling, Louisiana. So it's going to be very interesting to see exactly who they look to bring in as a head coach. And of course, according to my guys over there at HBCUsports.com, they actually have a listing of potential head coach hirings there. And of course, all of these guys have HBCU pedigree with them, starting with Terry Sims, who is currently the head coach at Bethune-Cookman, who's currently having a bad year there, going 2-8 right now. But at least they're riding a 2-game win streak. But I will say this, even in starting the season 0-8, in all of their games against FCS opponents, they lost by 7 or less points. So it wasn't like they were getting blown out by teams. It was just a possession here, possession there.
Right.
And they would end up losing.
At least they showed some life, right? At least they showed some life.
At least they were lively throughout the majority of the season. And then the rest of the list includes Quentin Morgan, who is currently the head coach over at Langston, Division II Langston, who is a Southern alum. And during his time at Langston, he's 45-11, winning 3 conference championships there. Then you got T.C. Taylor, who's the offensive coordinator over at Jackson State. Jerry Mack, who is currently the running backs coach over at the University of Tennessee, but he is formerly the head coach at North Carolina Central, and he was a former offensive coordinator over at Jackson State as well, and at Arkansas Pine Bluff. Also on that list, KJ Black, who's a former Prairie View A&M quarterback standout there, who is currently the Florida A&M's co-offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach. And then lastly, according to HBCUsports.com, Vincent Dancy over at Mississippi Valley State. Now, they also have a pretty in-depth record at around 2-8 right now themselves.
They're terrible too, yeah.
But I'll say this, with a very young team, they've been extremely competitive. And that quarterback that they have there and the running back, Caleb Johnson, that they have there as well, has been a beast. They've been in games too. They just, again, being a very young team, they just haven't been able to put games together themselves. So
they lost by 3 to FAMU. They lost by they won that one, but they were competitive against Southern. They beat Central. So they've been in a lot of games. To your point, I just say this, man. I think we could assume that going back to Grambling now, we could assume that Grambling's big loss, well, call it big loss, but that their loss to, well, it was kind of big, to Bethune at home. I think that probably, ironically, since you mentioned that, they're also looking at Bethune's head coach, that it was Bethune that probably put the final nail in that coffin for Dobbs.
Yeah.
But I just asked this question. You could ask this question on college football on any level. What is the point of breaking off a coach during the season, especially right near the end? They're about to play Southern. So I just want to ask any athletic director or school president, what's the point of firing a coach mid-season? I just never understood that.
The easy answer to that is getting ahead of everyone else that would potentially be looking for a head coach for multiple reasons. Well, first, you get out there earlier for your search. You get out there earlier to interview your candidates. Not just that, you get out there earlier to hire your head coach. And also your new head coach gets out there earlier to recruit players before National Signing Day. And then, of course, you have the early signing day coming up on December 1. So you have those situations. And one of the things that I've heard from several head coaches coming in, especially this year, has been, the new hires, that is, has been their inability to come in and deal with their teams. They had the issue there at Tennessee State with Eddie George, who came in, if memory serves me, in July. So he didn't have any spring ball with his team. He really didn't get a chance to get introduced to his team until late July, then early August, and of course the season starts in late August. Same thing was said by Norfolk State head coach Dawson Odoms. He basically said that, unfortunately, and this is very weird to hear this said, but I understand where he's coming from. Unfortunately, them starting out the season 6-2 and winning 6 straight games covered up a lot of their deficiencies. And now they're currently on a 2-game losing streak. They currently have been eliminated from championship play, and they were heavy favored to being the MEAC representative in the Celebration Bowl. And he kind of puts that on his inability to be there early on with his players. And since he didn't have that opportunity, especially with him coming from Southern in April, coming over to Norfolk State in probably like May, and then taking the job, and then, like I said before, not necessarily having any spring ball and not necessarily getting the opportunity to talk to those players and figuring out everybody, basically figuring out the job on the fly. But they were doing so well, you couldn't tell, and up until they lost to North Carolina Central.
Yeah.
Oddly enough, not only at Central's homecoming, but it was Dawson Odom's homecoming because, of course, he is also a Central alum as well.
Yeah.
So it was tough to have that happen. And therefore, and they were up in that game 21-0, only for them to lose in double overtime.
Oh,
then
God.
this past week, they were up 26-0 against Delaware State, a Delaware State team who has been scoring at least 8 points in the second half of the majority of the season. They allowed them to score 28 points against them. So, yeah, exactly, right? So, again, this is a team that you're talking about where you're like, okay, a lot of that stuff, a lot of our greatness was covered up until this point, and against two great defensive teams in the MEAC, in both Central and Delaware State, they got exposed in the second half. And God, I wasn't expecting either one of those teams to have the offensive output that they had against Norfolk State, which exposed their defense as well. So yeah, that says a lot. But it gives them that opportunity to get a jump start on a lot of things so they can be a little bit better prepared for the upcoming season. You
touched upon, as we mentioned, Eddie George by name earlier. And it makes me think about the Deion Sanders effect, the success he's had, albeit one calendar year, right? Yeah. But the success he's had that happened so quicker than a lot of people anticipated at Jackson State. Because I remember— Me too. I include me in that too. Because I remember a lot of people in the media, when they heard about Coach Prime coaching HBCU squad, they're kind of like, is he going to take it seriously? Especially the major networks. He's really going to take it seriously. Is he going to even be around to see it through? All that stuff, just like not taking it seriously. But the man, I mentioned this last week, the 55th highest recruiting class coming to this season across FCS and FBS football. Yeah. 55th. Higher than quite a few Power Fives. Yeah. 55th highest recruiting class. Now I didn't look at what he has coming in next season. As far as that, I had to look up those, and I'll probably look it up while you explain as well. But the fact that he's
the first one doesn't necessarily come out until the next couple of weeks. But they probably have a gauge of where they currently are, like as of right now, right? In terms of the commits, and then you probably won't get more commits until we get closer to December 1. Right. But even with that said, right, when he was first hired back in September of 2020, one of the things that he did was he was capable of getting a couple of guys to come over and transfer. Right. But it was still that spring period was still a period for him to learn about the conference. Him and his coaching staff figuring out how to coach these guys that he had, and figuring out, because that's basically what he said. He said, I took the spring to learn about us, not necessarily the SWAC. Right. And in that time period, he figured out his deficiencies, what he needed to prove upon, the places that he needed to attack in terms of recruitment, how to get better. And then from there, we got what we got coming up, what we got currently in the fall, with them currently 9-1 right now. Right. But with that said, the whole prime effect, of course, did lead to the hiring of Eddie George. And Eddie did say that Deion's hiring was influential in him going to Tennessee State. Yeah. And check this out. You mentioned the record, 9-1 record, Jackson State. They could easily be undefeated. Yes, they can. Yes, they could have. They played against a Division I FBS, used Louisiana Monroe. I say only. They only lost 12-7. And there was the game where they're up 7-3 at halftime. Yeah. They could easily be 10-0, bro. With a win over Division I. Undefeated. Yeah. And the thing is, they lose one of the better defensive players. In the middle of that game, he was ejected. And then, of course, that's also during the time frame in which Shedeur Sanders, their freshman quarterback, was still looking to develop. And that was one of the things that, Coach Sanders had been harping on for the beginning of the season was looking to get that offense on track.
Right.
And at that point in time, they hadn't gotten it there, but they were still capable of playing that team close enough to lose 12-7.
Yeah.
And it was even a situation where that game was still, I think, 9-7 at one point.
Right.
And Jackson State was driving and they couldn't convert in the red zone. I think they may have turned the ball over if memory serves me correctly. But yeah, that was a game that was a winnable game. And yes, you're right. They were a couple of plays away from being completely undefeated right now. And also doing something that no SWAC team has done since 1985, which is beat an FBS opponent.
Yeah. And, I'm looking at the attendance just for laughs. That game was very well attended. I'm wondering how many of those fans were from Jackson State that drove.
Oh, you mean the Louisiana Monroe game?
Yeah,
it's funny that you say that, right?
Okay.
Because that has been a point of contention all season long with several HBCU coaches. Oddly enough, those that are kind of in their first year right now. One of them comments coming from a guy we just talked about. We talked about all three of these guys just now. Dawson Odoms talked about the attendance of Norfolk State and their fans coming to games and how he's noticed that the dip there is not the same numbers as it was when he was over in Southern. But of course, those are two different fan bases. I will say that. And yeah, he's going to have to start doing things in order to be able to rile that fan base up to want to come out to see games. And that's going to be a task for him. Also, Eddie George has been complaining about attendance this season a couple of times about, Tennessee State. And I found that to be a shame because he was capable of doing things with that team that this team hasn't done in a very long time. They're on the precipice of a winning season right now. If memory serves
they're
5-5. They're 5-5.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're on the precipice of a winning season, winning 5 games. I'm sorry, I'm thinking about burgers right now.
Burgers, me too.
I'm on 5 guys. They're on the, they're about to win, but they won 5 games. I think they haven't done in several years now. And if they can win 6 and go above 500 in a year where they just got their quarterback a month before the season started, and he basically got on that staff a month before the season started. Well, a month and a half before the season started. Right. That says a lot about that program. And then to your point with Deion Sanders and that game you just talked about, he also talked about how he felt bad that the attendance numbers on the Jackson side of that game was very low. To actually quote him in a statement that he made about the attendance for that game, where he said, "Are you fans or are you partying?" Because he commented on how low the attendance was there, but you can go to a HBCU Classic with Jackson State involved, and everybody's there.
Right.
So which one are you? Are you a fan or are you partying? And then, of course, they had the record attendance of over 50,000 at their homecoming game.
Right.
And if they're capable of winning the SWAC championship, I'm going to be intrigued to see what attendance looks like for Jackson State in the Celebration Bowl, because it could potentially be insane. You talk about the Deion effect. The Deion effect
going back home. He'll be going back home.
And he's going back home too. Yeah. It's going to be in full effect there too. So it's going to be very interesting to see exactly how all of this pans out. But it not only affects in terms of attendance numbers, but like you said, it can also affect coaching decisions. And I think you're kind of alluding to it with Grambling. And I just rambled off a few names. All those guys that I just named that's on that list for HBCUsports.com as potential candidates have HBCU connections, if not all are HBCU alums as well. Now, let's be real. If the prime effect comes in, we've talked about this name several times this season. This dude is a Louisiana native.
Ed Reed.
And you got the two big schools in Louisiana that are looking for head coaches in both Southern and Grambling. And who's to say that both one, if not both of those schools, reach out to him and try to get him to be their new head coach? Because as of right now, Jason Rollins is not doing a good job. He's currently 4 4-6 all time. Well, not all time, but he's 4-6 overall, 3-4 within the SWAC.
Yeah.
In his first season as an interim head coach.
Yeah.
And he's doing it with a bunch of guys. He had a couple guys that were injured, especially his quarterback. He's been dealing with inconsistent quarterback play due to injuries.
Yeah.
And then his defensive end and God, what is the
looking it up
defensive
too?
ends? What's that?
I said I'm looking it up too while you're talking. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the defensive lineman's name, and it's killing me because I know Jordan is one of his names. He's the defensive end that won the Buchanan Award during the spring.
Okay.
But he was also out the majority of the season as well. So you have all of that going on, and this is what you get. And I'm wondering, will that be enough for them to go into a different direction and bring in a new head coach, or do they stick with Rollins going into 2022?
I'll say this, man. A lot of people, including present company, kind of banged upon the hire of Deion Sanders, right? But I think we all underestimated the effect, the butterfly effect in this case, because he has his team humming, and they're only going to get better, right? Especially the subsequent seasons when he starts to recruit more. And a lot of these kids, I mean, 55th, I keep going back to that number, 55th as an HBCU, not only HBCU, but an FCS school. Overall.
Yes.
That's, if he did that after one calendar year, it's going to go up, man, because they're looking to see what Jackson State could easily be undefeated at 10-0. They're 7-0 in the SWAC. They're 9-1-0, including a very close loss to an FBS side in Louisiana Monroe. I'm telling you, man, the sky's the limit for Jackson State as long as he's there. Now, that's the ultimate wild card. Other schools, we talked about this last week, other schools are to see what he's doing, how he's doing it, how quick he's doing it.
Yeah.
And they'll be like, well, shit, he's doing it there. What can he do with our resources?
Yeah, and it's interesting that you bring that up because Deion made an appearance this Monday at the SWAC press conference that I talked about earlier. But that player who I referred to, his name is Jordan Lewis, defensive end over there at Southern, who I hope gets an opportunity to get some looks in the league, even though he's had an injury-riddled fall. But during the press conference, Deion, was asked about, Coach Sanders was asked about, interviewing with Texas Christian last week. And his response was, I'm wondering how I'm paraphrasing him by saying, he's wondering how that's the case when he's basically been in a hospital bed for almost a darn month. Right. And also the fact that, he said that, yes, TCU is interested in my services. A lot of teams are interested in my services. And I saw that that quote went out in Sports Illustrated .com. But the one quote that they left out of that statement was, Ashley Robinson is also interested in my services as well. For those who don't know, of course, Ashley Robinson is the athletics director over there at Jackson State. So, yes, he made it known that there are, people that are interested in bringing him in as a head coach, but he feels as though that he still has a job to do there at Jackson State. Now, whether or not he stays there at Jackson or not is going, of course, it's going to be up to him, but it's going to be a wait and see situation. Right. Because I will say this, yes, he did say that, but he also said before the announcement of him being hired at Jackson State that he wasn't interviewing for that job either. So it is. I just take it with a grain of salt, but at the same time, I can only trust a man as far as his word. So it is what it is, right? Right. So all we can do is just wait and see how that goes down.
Yeah. So I say all that to say this. You mentioned, you tossed out his name earlier, Ed Reed. Schools are copycats, right? College collegiate athletics in general, it's a copycat sport as well as professional sports. So they see what's going on at Jackson State. Attendance is much better. As a matter of fact, I was looking up against the game against Texas Southern, I believe. They had over 30,000 in the stands for a regular season game that's not homecoming. That's pretty damn awesome, right?
That's incredible.
So, and we'll touch about attendance as a whole in a second, but at any rate, so these teams, I'm sticking with HBCUs right now. They see what's going on at Jackson State. They see what the potential is at Tennessee State with two former NFL stars, one being a Hall of Famer, Dion and Coach Prime, doing it well, and JD George doing the damn thing now at Tennessee State with a great staff that's led by offensive coordinator Hugh Jackson.
Yes,
who was not so much a head coach, but a great offensive coordinator. So he did Cincinnati as an offensive coordinator. So anyway, I started that to say this. Grambling is looking for a head coach. Southern maybe looking for a head coach. Now I think Alabama State.
Yes, Alabama State is looking for a head coach.
All right. So let's just put it out there. We already touched upon, we already had Ed Reed's name coming up. There are other NFL stars with connections to the state of Louisiana. Reggie Wayne, whose dad, uncles, I think some cousins, played football at Grambling. Now the wild card is, I think I mentioned this last week, where he was on the I Am Athlete podcast on YouTube. By the way, best podcast in the land, hands down. That and all the smoke. But anyway, he said in the Klown Times. Yeah, there you go. Thank you. But anyway, the point is that when I think the topic was it was about HBCUs attracting the blue chipper athletes in football, right? And so he was like, look, he's a New Orleans native. So he's like, look, man, he talking about his cousin, his daddy, his uncles and cousins playing ball at Grambling. He said, and he was legit upset about this. He's like, I know, I'm happy I went to Miami. I'm glad, I love Miami. I'm a Hurricane for life, threw up the U sign, whatever. He's like, but why didn't Grambling just at least holler at me? He said he got it. He said he understood it. He gets it. He was highly recruited, bigger programs, and in my mind, he's been a finalist for Hall of Famer twice. So he's eventually going to get in there. But the point is that him being a superstar athlete in the collegiate, high school, collegiate, and the pro levels, but he's still like, I just wish that Grambling, I'm paraphrasing, I wish Grambling would have at least recruited me.
Yeah.
So I don't know if he still holds that grudge of saying, well, damn, why didn't y'all just at least recruit me? I don't know how that come into play, but I'm just throwing out names because, and also in the state of Alabama State, there's a famous NFL Hall of Famer who's from the state of Alabama, Terrell Owens. He worked with, I'm just throwing out names, but he worked with Dion, Coach Prime, at various camps he had.
He did. He was just at the camp there in Jackson State.
And he swears by Coach Dion. He loves him. That's his big brother. But the thing is that I'm just throwing out names. So if you're these schools, again, stick with the HBCUs. If you're these schools, you seen what Coach Prime is doing. You seen what Eddie George is on the verge of doing. Why not? Why not?
Right.
And attendance is gonna, I know that Tennessee State plays at Nissan Stadium where the Titans play, which is baffling in and of itself. That's another reason why attendance is bad. But at any rate, if they see what's going on at Jackson State, the potential. Never mind that Florida A&M is pretty damn good too. And they really got great attendance too. But nevertheless, I'm just sticking to this part of the conversation. And probably Prairie View too. Why not? If you look at, and plus, again, two of these schools are brands. Southern and Grambling, they're brands.
Huge brands in HBCU
why not?
Athletics.
If you're those two in particular, why the hell not?
Why the hell not?
Why the hell
but
not?
The thing is this though, right? And it's interesting that you put those names up because my first thought process is this, right? what is their affinity to want to coach?
Correct.
I say that though, knowing that Coach Prime wanted to coach. He was already coaching high school. He was already doing camps. He wanted to do an HBCU camp for defensive backs.
Right.
So he wants to coach. He wants to mold young men. On the converse of that, we got Eddie George, who legit said that he had no interest in being a head coach whatsoever up until seeing that Deion Sanders became a head coach. And from there, he made the decision after praying about it. So you have either side of the coin where it can go either way.
Correct.
So
you're right.
when people come out and say that, that might not work with them, and yes, Eddie George might be a one-off situation, but it might not be, right? Because these guys who, matter of fact, Jimmy Smith, wide receiver from Jackson State. We've talked about this on the show before, who, as far as I know of, never had any aspirations of wanting to coach, was intrigued about joining Coach Sanders' staff there at Jackson State. So you don't know what happens and how things and how minds can be changed. And then, of course, if these guys can go ahead and surround themselves with assistants that already know the game, that will be hugely beneficial to them the same way it's been beneficial to both Sanders and Eddie George.
Yeah. And I'm glad to see a lot of these schools, we'll close the segment on this, getting some shine. I mean, I'm glad that they're getting some shine. I mean, it's too bad it took Coach Prime and it listens to Eddie George to do it. But I mean, to the fact that they were able to, their influence, probably Coach Prime's more than Eddie George, but still their influence got the likes of Michael Strahan, to sponsor suits to a lot of athletes at different SWAC schools, not only just his alma mater, Texas Southern, providing them with suits from his brand name at I think there's JCPenney or something like that, but they're still suits. And if a guy at Michael Strahan's influence to do that, that had to be influenced from Coach Prime and Coach George. And, many others too. I can't think, like LeBron James, we talked off camera about that. His Nike brand, King, his King like Nike brand, is outfitting FAMU's, at least the basketball squad. I don't know the football squad, but at least the basketball squad. So that's the first school to get that brand. And that's a big brand. I mean, it will never be the Jumpman, to be sure, because Jordan had such a long head start. But still, the fact that it's LeBron James, who's a Nike client, launching his brand at an HBCU like FAMU, is something. So that's like I said, the Coach Prime effect. And I'm telling you, man, it sounds far-fetched, but to see if Coach Prime continues to have success the way he has, after doing it and after taking on a calendar year to do so, and to see Eddie George continue to improve at Tennessee State, don't sleep on it. I mean, again, it's about how much they want to coach. You're right. The desire to coach of former stars, African-American stars, that they want to coach, to get in the coaching profession to coach. But if you're these schools, and again, specifically in the SWAC, if you're these schools, maybe the MEAC, but most of the SWAC, because SWAC's it's like the SEC of FCS. If in terms of hype, but if you're these SWAC schools, particularly the two brands, one has a job opening in Grambling, the others may have a job opening in Southern. You see in another brand, Jackson State, get a lot of shine. Why not?
Exactly, right? Take these chances. I might attempt to take a chance and see who is at least interested from there. I mean, of course, while looking, because at the end of the day, yes, it is a business, and but it's a combination, of course, generating revenue and winning, and it's a lot easier to generate revenue when you're winning. And if you can go ahead and bring in the right head coach to come in and do that, and then if you got a name attached to it, it makes that thing that much easier. I hate to see that we are those type of creatures in terms of HBCU fans, where it takes for us to really want to come in and watch teams play when they have a name associated to that program, because it doesn't necessarily just take winning. Because I guarantee you, Prairie View A&M, who is currently 9-2 right now, their attendance numbers probably aren't like Jackson State's numbers right now. But they also got a winning program too.
Yeah.
Who else can I say that? Well, Alcorn State. I mean, they're currently a 7-8 win team, and I know that their attendance numbers aren't the same as Jackson State's right now.
6-4 overall, and 5-2 in the conference.
There you go, 6-2. There you go. I'm over here giving them more wins than what they got. But they're still in contention for the division.
Right.
But they got a tough hole ahead with Jackson State.
Yeah.
At Jackson State. And if they're capable of doing that, and then Prairie View loses next week to Mississippi Valley State, that they go ahead and they end up winning their division again. But that's another program who has dealt with a lot of success recently, but probably hasn't seen those type of attendance numbers. But it took a celebrity to do it. And my guess is that it'll probably take a celebrity to do it elsewhere.
Especially those two brands. So one quick question, and we'll close the segment as I meant to ask this earlier. I know one time the SWAC led FCS conferences in attendance one part, right? Is it still
several times?
Okay, several times. So it's probably still the case, but yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh, most definitely. After you put up 53 at homecoming.
Yeah.
They probably still lead. Yeah.
So that's good. I mean, just go to show the potential. So we'll close the show on this. We're going from HBCU collegiate athletics to the NFL. One thing I didn't bring up last week, or probably happened after the podcast, was Jon Gruden, our favorite Bama, is back at it again. Like he's suing the NFL and Commissioner Roger Goodell over the release of the emails, that he had racist, misogynistic, and anti-LGBTQIA language. And the suit filed in Klown, Nevada, accused the league and commissioner of a, quote, get a load of this, malicious and orchestrated campaign in which they sought to destroy the career and reputation of Gruden. And here's this quote. There's another quote. I got another quote for you right quick. If you think that was crazy. This is a statement released by his attorney, Adam Hosmer-Henner. The complaint, quote, I'm quoting, alleges that the defendant selectively leaked Gruden's private correspondence to the Wall Street Journal and New York Times in order to harm Gruden's reputation and force him out of his job. Now, I'm gonna stop in the middle of that statement to say this.
Please.
At first, when I heard about Jon Gruden suing the league, I figured, you know what? I kind of saw this coming. He's trying to get his money, trying to recoup his money, trying to save as bit of his name that he can, his reputation as much as he can. And I was like, it's a money grab. The NFL is going to have him for lunch and let it be the end of it. But we've watched Law and Order long enough to know that sometimes, what may seem frivolous, may be kind of legit in terms of having the case. Let me read the second half of the statement. Quote, there is no explanation or justification for why Gruden's emails were the only ones made public out of the 650,000 emails collected in the NFL's investigation of the Washington football team, or for why the emails were held for months before being released in the middle of the Raiders season. End of quote. Remember what we were saying, and others in the sports world, media, fans, whatever, the media, is saying, okay, you got these emails from Jon Gruden. What about the others? What about the ones, what about Bruce Allen's response? I'm sure he responded to them. What about the league counsel? I can't think of his name right now. What he's responding, he's been going back and forth. How did he respond to it? I mean, well, I know how he responded to it when he said about, I'm trying to remember here off the top of my head, when they had like they're trying to cater to women, the NFL. Like, why'd you have something? Oh no, as far as the he said something special about that too. But when he talked about the Rooney Rule, why don't they have some type of rule that helps Republican white men? That's the league council saying that shit. That's the league council, the head lawyer in charge. That's kind of like the knackers to the AG of the United States of America. That came out of his mouth onto a keyboard into an email message. And so you wonder why the league, i.e. the owners, are very nervous about having a lot of this shit come out. Again, out of 650,000 emails, you're going to zero in what Gruden said as if he was the only one. Again, he sent the two other cats for a reason, because he felt comfortable saying those things to those guys. And you're going to focus on just him? You can imagine what was said also during the time, this goes back 8-9 years, right? So you can imagine during that time, remember what else took place 8-9 years ago during that time frame? Much shorter in 2016, Colin Kaepernick took a knee.
Colin Kaepernick took a knee, yep.
So again, and we know that Gruden called him a loser.
Mm-hmm.
So to at least Bruce Allen and a few others, where are their emails on that? Where are they? You can't.
Scott?
We're not idiots. And
No,
like
we're not.
On Fox Sports Radio, there's a show, I think it's in the morning, with LeVar Arrington, Brady Quinn, called Two Pros and a Joe, and another dude.
Okay.
And that cover that same thing. And Brady Quinn's like, I think he leans towards the right as far as political ideology, but he was like, does the NFL think that we're stupid? To us to believe that he and LeVar Arrington both said this, that Gruden was the only one guilty of this the last 8 to 9 to 10 years?
Oh, of course not. Of course not. We all know that, right? And I've been saying this for some time now.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter what situation you're talking about when it comes to correspondence between two people within a sporting league, but primarily so the ones that have been brought up the most in recent years have been the NFL as it pertains to Tom Brady's text.
Yes.
And then now, of course, the emails for Jon Gruden.
Right.
And then when people talked about, phones being destroyed and emails not being released, and people wondered why that was the case, I kept telling people.
And Spygate tapes destroyed too.
And the tapes destroyed, right? I kept telling people, and of course it was more of a vanilla response. But now if we want to go with some flavor here, the vanilla response was they didn't want the rest of their stuff exposed, which could have been anything. And at the time, my original thought process with Tom Brady, at least, was, okay, maybe a dick pic, maybe a nude from Giselle, whatever, right? It could have been any type of correspondence that he probably didn't want revealed. The same thing I said about the Washington football team and their emails. Dude, I stepped it up a little bit and did add a little bit of flavor on that one. Mm-hmm. There was no way in the world they were going to release the rest of those emails if it was going to make people who are currently in positions of power accountable, well, not accountable, but guilty of comments that they made, or disparaging comments that they made about whoever. It didn't matter. And then when, of course, Captain NFL, aka Roger Goodell, comes out with the shield and does his best to protect the league, and it's working, right? Everybody wants to see these emails, but I can name to you right now 32 Bamas that do not want those emails released.
Yes.
And I'm gonna go ahead and say that all 32 are currently NFL owners. Now, not just for the sole purpose of what's going on in terms of the sexual harassment and all of the racial epithets potentially thrown around between front office guys and head coaches and so on and so forth. But also got to remember, and I didn't even think about this until watching. I'm gonna go ahead and shout this show out. I normally don't because they don't pay us to, but God, what is that? Again, off the record again, or something like that with Bob Costas that comes on HBO.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, also off the record, whatever. It's something to that effect. But of course, his first show was originally off the record. Went off the year for some time, and he came back, and then they repackaged it. Cool. But he interviewed Jerry Jones, and I completely forgot about this case. But I can tell you a group of people who haven't. The people of St. Louis, and the lawsuit that they're currently dealing with as it pertains to the misinformation and the misdirection that came about when the Rams moved from St. Louis to Los Angeles. Yeah. And the thing is, if you start exposing emails and then stuff like that starts to come out, then the NFL comes out as looking criminal again. In that case, there's no way in the world the league is going to release this information if it's going to do nothing but hurt the league.
Now, and what if the government steps in? There's been rumors about.
And then if the government steps in,
about to take away the antitrust, threatening to take that away if they don't expose these emails. This ain't over.
No, it's not over.
This ain't over.
You know what? I'm going to wait and see who's going to be powerful enough to step in and make sure that it's not over, or if there eventually has to become another sacrificial lamb, and people are already looking towards Daniel Snyder as said sacrificial lamb, right? But my thing is this: even if they get rid of Daniel Snyder, which this fan base here would
y'all be doing praise dances in the street, man. On U Street, God, the Fairfax County Park Highway, Parkway, whatever it is. Y'all be on 95, 395. Y'all be just praise dancing, rain dancing.
Man, everything. It would look like a revival from just south of Baltimore all the way to the Carolinas, where there's still tons of Washington football fans there too.
Right.
If that happens.
Right.
But my thing is this: even if he does become the sacrificial lamb, and I know there's a lot of people that don't like this dude. Dude, he's still not the only guilty person in this situation, and it still doesn't necessarily resolve the situation. Right. Now, there are a lot of people who try to compare what's going on with Daniel Snyder with what's going on, what went on with Donald Sterling, the LA Clippers, and the NBA. The difference is, as far as we know, the NFL owners aren't as blatantly racist as Donald Sterling has been shown to be on multiple occasions.
Yes.
And then, of course, they bring up the fact, of course, how the entire franchise has now revived itself and has become a crown jewel of the NBA ever since the removal of Donald Sterling. And there's a possibility that can potentially happen with the football team.
Right.
But I still say, and then that's the other thing too. The comments that Donald Sterling made was made to a freak that he just happened to be hanging out with.
Right. But people, it's one thing to be told about. It's another to hear it from his mouth.
Yes. Right. And we heard it from his mouth because he recorded it, right? And felt as though he was being out of pocket with it and did so. But the thing was, that was between him and her.
Yeah.
So it only exposes him, which makes it easier to get him out of there. The same way with Jerry Richardson. It was just him groping chicks in his office.
Yep, and saying disparaging things. Yep.
Yeah. Had that been both him, Jerry Jones, and what's your boy over there in New England, the owner?
Rob Kraft, Mr. Kraft.
And Robert Kraft, and had been the three of them groping chicks in Charlotte, then it would have been a problem.
Yeah.
But since it was him, it was the easy scapegoat. We can go ahead and sever that situation. Be gone with
it. He didn't try to fight it. That's how bad it was.
He didn't try to fight it.
He didn't try to fight it. That's how bad it was.
But with Danny, in a situation where he doesn't want to let go, and there are other people who are potentially involved, he's like, yo, if I go down, we all he's straight he straight what's your boy's name in Juice? Bishop. Matter of fact, they said it in New Jack City too. Basically, he basically said, God, if I go down, we go down too because we crew. Yeah, we all going down. If I go down, yeah, I'm telling. Oh yeah, matter of fact, yeah, that's what Nino Brown said during the trial. I'm telling on everybody. This thing is bigger than me.
Yeah,
and this thing bigger than Nino Brown.
Yeah,
because so and so said the same thing. So and so said the same thing. We colluded to make sure that the LA Rams the Rams were capable of moving to LA because we knew that they were a bigger money market. Even though the city of St. Louis was still willing to build a new stadium for the Rams there, but we said, fuck it, we want to go ahead and move them up to LA anyway. There's no way to where all of this stuff is going to be like a house of cards if they go after if owner falls.
Yeah.
But yeah, they can take out a coach. And yeah, you know what? Maybe Coach Gruden has a point.
Yeah.
But at the same time, so what? Whatever you ask for, the league will probably promptly pay that off so they can continue to stay in power, dude.
Right.
Let's be real.
Yeah. But it'd be interesting if the rumors are true that some cats from Congress, Capitol Hill, whatever, are looking to step in and say, hey, what about those emails? Again, it's like you said, it's going to take someone very powerful.
It's going to take somebody powerful to do it.
Yeah. You don't know who that person is yet, but it's going to take someone very powerful from Capitol Hill to say, what's up with those emails?
Yeah.
If you know that antitrust thingy, I forgot what you call it. I'm not smart enough to understand that, but that legalese. But if y'all still want that, I think it's some type of exemption. If you guys still want that, what's up with those emails?
Yeah.
It's going to. If it's possible, the possibility that it could happen, let you know that the NFL may be sweating a little bit, more than a little bit. So this remains to be seen. But this whole thing is not over, and it's just getting started. And again, because we know, Jon Gruden probably knows. Again, to what you said about what you said about Danny Boy Snyder, he's probably like, yo, you take me down, I got a Rolodex of motherfuckers who I emailed this shit to. That paper trail, I got receipts too now. So it's going to be very, very, very interesting. Very, very interesting to see what's going forward, but we'll see what happens. And, if it means a new owner in Washington, D.C., where you guys get the praise dance all night long till it's like it's 1999 all over again, then
dude,
it'll
look like the end of the Wiz. It will. Can't you feel a brand new day? People be dancing in the streets, half naked.
He's on down that road, all right. They be easy down 95.
Jumping around.
That be easy down up 395.
Yeah, but see, that's the thing, right? That's why it makes the situation so easily discardable, because a lot of the people who are probably guilty that they wouldn't mind tossing it off right now, like I said before, are no longer in the league, which are Jon Gruden, Jay Gruden,
right,
and Bruce Allen.
Right. Why not?
I love the fact, oh my God, during that same episode on the Bob Costas show, of course, they interviewed Keyshawn Johnson, my favorite person in recent weeks, who, of course, again, is interviewed and asked about his thoughts on Jon Gruden. And, we've heard about him saying how much he didn't necessarily like Gruden in the past.
Right. And,
a lot of his moves, especially as it pertains to the amount of African-Americans that he's had on his staff, the amount of African-American players that have constantly reduced, which is a known thing. Because I've noticed the amount of HBCU athletes that used to be at the Raiders organization that are no longer there. So yeah, we've seen that drop off ever since Gruden has come in as a head coach. And he let it be known that those were things like that, and just small things that other places where he didn't necessarily like, but he attempted to start making a connection between Gruden and Bruce Allen. But we already know that he came out and praised Bruce Allen before. Remember, he tried to go, okay, Jon Gruden to God, what is Bruce Allen's brother who used to be governor of Virginia? I don't want to say it's Tim Allen, but yeah, his brother was governor, and of course Bruce was there too, and then of course you got with the governor Allen being a conservative, and them sharing conservative views, probably with one another and with Gruden. That's probably their connection and stuff like that. I'm like, dude, of course they were also connected because they both were there in Tampa together. Matter of fact, I think Allen was the one that brought over Gruden to Tampa.
Yeah, they're close. They're very close.
Yeah, and Allen was also in Oakland when he was there too. Yeah. So, I mean, now you want to point this out, dude?
Yeah. We'll see, brother. We'll see. We won't give ourselves headaches thinking about this, but
exactly.
Anyway, let's call it, brother. Thank y'all for tuning in to the next podcast, man. We could talk about this shit all night, but we gotta go to bed. We're not getting paid for it. But anyway, continue to check out the Wayne Nash's great work, HBCU.com. You see in the background there on this poster. Whereas for all things HBCU sports, Sleazy Ritter every Tuesday now on Facebook Live. HeroSports.com is great work. Talks about FCS athletics pertaining to HBCUs. You see the website here, www.theclowntimes.net, which is my sports blog. I hadn't updated in a while, but I need to put some updates on that, as well as my Facebook page. Just do a search for it, Clown Times Skins Club, Clown spelled with K. The merch at cafepress.com. Search for the Clown Times. There you go. Search for the Clown Times Sports. Again, those links for my merch and Dwayne's great work on the web will be in the description when I upload this tomorrow. Please see the like, share, and comment as well, and subscribe. That's the important thing too. Anyway, so let's enjoy this weekend. Big weekend in collegiate athletics, big weekend in NFL and NBA, college basketball, whatnot. Take care. Peace out.
Oh, before we go, two things real quick. One, it was George Allen, who was the former
George
governor
Allen
of
Jr.
Virginia.
Okay.
And then two, we were just told just this past week, I know you don't want to go too much into this, but we were just told it's not about the most deserving. It's the best teams in college football. So we already know who the Final Four are going to be already. Thank you, committee, for allowing us to know what you think by telling us that, oh my God, the quotes coming from the committee have been laughable. Yeah, it's not about the most deserving. It's about the better teams. And then listening to Jonathan Allen, an alum of Alabama, University of Alabama, on the radio earlier today, when it was asked about expansion, he basically said, maybe 8 teams, but you start doing more than 8, it becomes ridiculous. Because if you look at the player teams, if you had to gamble, can you name me a team especially this year, that you think would win the title outside of Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, and maybe Michigan State, and Oregon? And if that's the case, why would you want to do more than 8 teams? This is coming from an alum of a Power 5 conference.
Oh,
and if he believes that, I truly believe the committee believes that too.
Yep. Well, on that note, keep up alive, and whatever the fuck happens. We out. We out. It is what